salmon. Today they are starting to come back to the Loire. This man is pursuing the same goal, Martin Arnoux, Christine Jean's disciple. His battle is to bring the great Atlantic salmon back to the Loire's main tributary, the Allier River. This also means dismantling a dam, the Poutès Dam.
Tout le monde sait que le barrage de Poutès est au cœur des meilleures frayères, que c'est le seul grand barrage sur l'Allier. Tout le monde commence à intégrer la valeur du poisson, la valeur de cette rivière. Donc il n'y a pas de raison que dans le prolongement du combat de Loire vivante, on n'efface pas dans les années qui viennent le barrage de Poutès.
The concession granted to the EDF will end in 2007. The company has asked for a 40-year extension. Now is the time to act.
Maintenant, le barrage est toujours là, donc notre mobilisation, évidemment, reste très forte pour franchir les derniers mètres afin que tout le monde comprenne, que la société comprenne que c'est un ouvrage du passé et que maintenant l'avenir, c'est l'enlever.
The region already has a windmill park. 10 would be enough to replace the dam's electricity production. The logical follow-up to this battle of wills started 20 years ago by Christine Jean and the Loire conservationists. In 1992, Christine was awarded international recognition for her battle, the Goldman Prize, the environmental equivalent of a Nobel. But Christine has forgotten the glamour already and gone back to the fight. The Loire is not only a success for her, but for all those who have fought for respect for the environment and nature. At the time, they weren't so many.
C'est vrai que c'est parfois un peu drôle de voir comment, aussi peu nombreux, nous avons pu être perçus comme étant extrêmement puissants. Et là, ça interpelle quand même. Mais en même temps, c'est bien, parce que je crois que nous étions puissants. Nous étions certainement puissants parce que nous allions dans le sens de l'histoire. Il y a eu ma passion pour la nature, et il y a eu cet objet Loire qui était quand même un objet magnifique. Et puis, il y a eu aussi ce combat pour la nature et ce combat pour la démocratie. Parce que tout d'un coup, on apprend que, ma foi, la démocratie, ça s'use quand on s'en sert pas.
All the same, Christine won't let her guard down. Today, she's hoping to influence decisions concerning the Saint-Nazaire port development in the Loire estuary. This extension threatens the marshes and mudflats, essential feeding grounds for fish and birds. They must not be destroyed or polluted. The aim is to limit port expansion without reproducing past mistakes, so that the Loire may remain a free and living river.
To protect water is to preserve life. The desert is not always immutable. Here in the Negev, in southern Israel, the forest is growing. Is that the Yatir forest?
Forest Yatir, yes.
Olive trees, cypresses, pines, pistachios. This forest in the middle of the Negev is the dream of one man, David Ben-Gurion, one of the founders of Israel. Here 4 million trees stop the desert. Villages are born, and man is cultivating the place. This forest is entirely man-made. The first tree had been planted in 1963. Today, the Yatir forest covers 3,000 hectares. It's the biggest one in the country, and it's just over 40 years old. Continuing the fight against desertification, the Negev population will increase by 50% within the next 10 years, with new immigration from Eastern Europe. But elsewhere in the world, due to the dryness and bad exploitation of the soil, close to 600 million hectares, around 11 times the size of France, are becoming deserts. In Israel, agronomists have actually created and improved desert agriculture. We're in Keturah in Israel. Here is an incredible woman that I want to introduce you to. Her name is Elaine Soloway. She heads an amazing research program in this experimental kibbutz, surrounded by a magnificent palm grove. But I won't say any more. Hi, Elaine.
Hello.
What kind of tree are you planting?
I'm planting a tree called Balanitis aegypticus. This is a tree that is indigenous to this desert and uses very little water. It uses about 10 cubic meters of water per tree per year.
Why is planting trees so important?
Actually, the only way to revive an area which is suffering desertification is to plant trees, to allow the other plants and the other animals and the insects and birds to return. The trees underpin the ecosystem. They're the most important element. Trees are a cure for many of our environmental problems. They're not only the lungs of the world, they're the world's air conditioners. They cool the ground, they allow the rain to return, because cold air rising means that the clouds don't blow over, that they begin to drop the rain. Trees also stabilize ground that's eroding away. They stop sandstorms. Trees can be planted in protective belts around cities and villages and farms. They store carbon. They can help counteract the effects of global warming just by doing that. If 1/3 of the planet's surface would be forest, a good proportion, I would think that a lot of our problems would be lessened and perhaps even disappear.
Can we say that all deserts can be replanted?
I think we can return it perhaps to what it was. Whether or not we can tackle the Sahara and turn it into a forest that's beyond our power. And perhaps it shouldn't be done, because deserts belong on the world too, the way other ecosystems do.
Elaine Soloway has brought many plants from all around the world to test their resistance to dryness and salt. Here, water pumped from the ground is brackish, in other words, salty. Of the 800 million people who are victims of starvation in the world, most of them live in the dry belt. It's by improving desert agriculture that Elaine Soloway contributes in the fight against starvation.
This is the yellow pitaya. It's from a cactus, one that uses very little water. And it's an excellent fruit and very good for people.
It's delicious.
The water equation is very good on this, and it's a favorite among people who try it.
It's full of water. It's unbelievable.
If we find better ways to use less water and use less energy to fit better into natural areas, then I think it will be better for our children and our grandchildren. And that's one of the reasons why I'm determined here in this little country with such a small amount of arable land and such small water resources. I believe I can design a better sort of perennial agriculture that won't do damage and that will give us everything that we need to live well.
Elsewhere in the world, people can still live without wasting water. In Mali, it almost never rains. Over there, the Dogon people, even without water, are the biggest onion producers in Africa.
A baking sun exerts its unyielding power 800 kilometers from Bamako in the heart of Mali, on the frontier of the scorching Sahel. An immense sandstone plateau, where not a trickle of water can be found, ends at the 200-kilometer-long Bandiagara cliffs. This is Dogon country. Between the plain and the plateau, water is so rare it creates perpetual anxiety. For generations, women have accepted to confront this hostile territory full of dramatic cracks. But how do they manage without water? Perched on a cliff, the village of Duru has 350 inhabitants. Drought, wind, sand, and barely any rain make the Dogon people heroic farmers. Strangely, the onion is the speciality of the Dogons. traditional farming requires a lot of water. Maintaining these gardens is a real challenge, demanding military discipline controlled by Amadou, the water chief. He does the rations, and he has a sharp eye. $50 gourds per family per day. These are the water warden's orders, which must be obeyed. A dying pond, all that is left from the last rains to water the gardens. You can see the worry on Amadou's face.
Je suis inquiet et que vraiment il ne pleut pas beaucoup et que c'est la seule eau. Vraiment, quand on prend beaucoup, on risquerait à 3 mois de ne plus avoir de l'eau.
Every villager here lives on farming and the onion harvest. Each family has his plot of land. Despite the impossible conditions, they produce several thousand tons of onions per year. By severely rationing the water, the country's most important source of income is maintained. Despite the village elders' petitions, there are not many clouds over Dogon country. 60 days of rain a year, one of the lowest rainfall counts in the world. Knowing how to manage the water, avoiding waste, is all part of survival. Every square metre is conceived to retain maximum moisture. Coming out of this arid earth, the onions demand months of effort and deprivation. Although the gardens appear fresh, it's impossible to forget the burning hell which surrounds the land farmed by the Dogons. Thanks to their superhuman efforts, the Dogons have become the leading producers of African red onions. Out of the rocks fallen from the cliff, the women extract banko, earth mixed with straw and manure to help cultivation. Market day in Duru. Kadi comes once a week to sell the onions she's grown with her husband. The women are in charge of bargaining. Chattering and haggling, they animate the market. Buying, selling, swapping. The wholesalers take away several tons of onions at a time. Heavy bundles are carried off to the capital, Bamako, where they are distributed throughout the whole African continent.
There is always one figure which stuns when we talk about water. 70% of fresh water used throughout the globe is used for irrigation of agricultural land. But sometimes we waste this water. See for yourself. In the middle of the desert of the Wadi Rum in Jordan, irrigation canals which occupy the width of the valley over hundreds of hectares. What's this all about? All this irrigation. Incredible. All made in the desert. It's crazy.
En plein désert, une construction pareille.
It looks like a French-style garden with those borders and alleys.
Tu vois la maison là?
You see that house over there?
What do you think when you look at that? Do you think it's good to do that or not?
I think that human can do anything.
They tell me that this folly is owned by a royal family from the Middle East. Ricardo Petrella was right. The rich man never runs out of water. I cannot stop thinking about the fact that French people also act like rich people.